We are back. Hello, Julie Wilson. Welcome to episode 4 of the Ahab Breakdown.
Hey, Dan. How are you doing over there?
Pretty good, pretty good. How are things in New York City?
New York City it is what it is, you guys. So welcome everyone. Episode 4 of the Ahab Breakdown. If you've not been here before or don't know who we are, Dan and I are the co-creators of Ahab, the Ahab platform. And I'm also the senior manager of digital production platforms at Penguin Random House Audio. And Dan?
I am the Senior Vice President of Content Production for Penguin Random House Audio.
So if you guys don't know what Ahab is yet, if you guys haven't been here before, so Ahab or ahabtalent.com is a casting platform that's currently used by the Penguin Random House Audio producers worldwide. So that's in the US, that's in Canada, that's in the UK, Spain, India, and Australia. So we're using it to cast audiobooks every single week. And soon enough, we're going to be opening it up to other content creators and casting professionals outside of the platform or outside of Penguin Random House to start producing voiceover work across multiple categories, which is something we're definitely going to be talking about today. So we built the platform to break down barriers between casting professionals like us and actors like you guys, and create a community where we can all cast books and get work and create something really awesome. Big picture, what Dan and I would love to do is create a more inclusive and representative industry. And I think we're already doing that by casting the perfect voice for every project. So that's a little bit about the platform. Dan, what about the breakdown?
So the breakdown is an extension of our platform. It's a forum where we can get a little bit closer to the acting community and where you guys can get a little bit closer to us, the people making casting decisions in this industry, and learn from other experienced audio professionals at the same time. Just a few notes about the breakdown. We record every episode. They'll be available on YouTube. If you missed the last episode, actors and directors, it's nothing personal. You can find it on YouTube right now. Attendees, if you need to talk to the community, so change your chat session, your chat settings from sending message to just the panelists to also the panelists and the attendees. If you want to get chatty with everyone that's in the room.
It's already going up and down the right side of my screen. So love and seeing where everyone's coming in from.
And then you can upvote questions in the Q&A area of the chat. So go in there, put in questions and upvote them, and hopefully we can get to them. We always end up with way more questions that we can answer. And what we end up doing is kind of trying to answer some of those on social media after the fact. And I know I get a lot of questions in different platforms from a lot of you, and I try to answer as many as I can. I know, Jules, you do the same.
Yep.
So on this episode, we're going left. When we've been going right the whole time, we're going left this time. We've been talking about audiobooks, and our whole life is audiobooks, right, Jules? So
oh my God, for so long, decades.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for 20 plus years here, you've been doing this over 10 years, so we really wanted to dive into going away from audiobooks and talk about how to become more multidimensional as an actor, meaning, how you can get into other forms of voiceover. So we brought on some people that we know, some people that we don't know so well, versatile actors, Terrace Sands, James C., and Grammy award-winning producer and composer and director, Scott Cresswell, someone we know very well, Jules, who all work in these industries. To talk a little bit more beyond audiobooks, talk a little bit about commercials, video games, and animation. So Jules, why don't you talk a little bit about what we're going to do with the rest of the episode after we talk to our guests?
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't been here before, the format's pretty similar every week, though we talk about different topics. So we're going to start off with a sample review. And what Dan and I do every week is we go into Ahab, we look through a bunch of profiles, and we kind of think about like what samples really exemplify what we're talking about this week. And so we're going to bring on 2 profiles that really showcase really interesting work across multiple areas of voiceover. So audiobooks, as well as video games or animations. We'll go there first. We'll dive into our conversation with all of our guests for about a half hour, talking about all areas of voiceover work. And then we'll move into what I think is becoming everyone's favorite portion of the show, which is VO Roulette. And that's when we bring on one of you guys onto our virtual stage. We ask you a bunch of questions about who you are, your work, what you want to do, what you have done. And so if you're interested in being featured in that, send a message to the panelists directly and just let us know. And then at the end of the show, near the end of the show, Molly, who has been our voice of God in the past and who helps Dan and I out on every single one of these, she will get in touch with you directly and then pull you on screen so you don't have to do anything. And then finally, we'll have just some wrap-up thoughts from all of us. Dan and I always love these because we never prepare anything. I like that we're very present in the conversation. So hopefully we have some words of wisdom for you by the end. If not, we'll just be super silly.
Great. Do we want to jump right into some of the sample review?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Mal, let's bring them up.
So I chose Renee Ruiz this week, and I talk about Renee a lot just because of what I want for him in audiobook work and how we worked with each other together. I love Renee's range in terms of all of the voices he can do. He brings so much personality and humor to everything he does. And yet the most humorous thing about our like working relationship is the first thing that I cast him for was a nonfiction title on, I think, neuroscience, which is as far from anything humorous or comedic or character driven. But recently I was able to cast him in a book called Cozy. It's a picture book by Jan Brett, where he was able to have some fun, show up a bunch of character voices. So I chose his animation reel as well as his nonfiction sample on Ahab because I thought it really showcased not only a bunch of character work, but when he pulls it back and takes a breath and showcases his nonfiction work as well. So let's play those samples.
Ever have one of those bad ideas just pop into your head? You know the ones. They seem like a great idea at the time, but if you had stopped to think about it a moment. I'm talking about those ideas where you just seize the moment and do what your heart tells you to. Then, after the dust settles and you get bandaged up, your parents say, "What the hell were you thinking?"
Yeah, hi, Amazon customer service? This is Barry Banana. No, not banana, banana. Oh, never mind. Look, I took your monster potion.
There's no time to waste. We're heading straight into the heart of the storm. Hang on!
I was expecting more of an Amazon goddess wielding a flaming sword kind of thing.
Outsiders by nature have their usefulness, and this one intrigues me.
Wow,
So-
what range.
What range? And a little pivot from what I just said, because that was actually his YA sample. But I think that also shows you the difference between the audiobook narration, which is more about telling a story, taking a breath, sitting back, not going super slow, but it's definitely a slower pace than animation, which is just character, voice. But this also for me showcases the reason why I would love for all of you guys to upload samples onto your profiles that are not just audiobook work, because especially as I'm working in picture books and graphic novels, or even full cast narrations where I need you for punchy dialogue, I've been looking a lot at animation reels and cartoon reels and video game reels just to see what else you can do. So I thought his samples really exemplified that.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, I always say, I think a lot of narrators play it safe and say, I'm really gonna put in a lot of good, because I'm the one always preaching about narrative, right? Like make sure that the narrative is like solid and consistent, and but we do have a need, and I think publishers, and there's all kinds of need for character voices and all, especially in the YA and the young and children's books and picture books. So, I think it is a good idea, because I do think producers cross over to listen to some of these other samples to hear, hey, does this person have range? So,
and sometimes there are these big epic fantasy books that I really want a bunch of character voices to come out of you. And some actors are perfectly capable of doing that, but I just can't know that from their past nonfiction and fiction work. So these reels are a great way to showcase that.
For sure.
What do you got, Dan?
Hey, let's see what we have. Jennifer Aquino. Now, this is, you stole my thunder a little bit in talking about how different the two things are, and we'll hear it again in Jennifer's samples. But Jennifer is I'll talk from a producer standpoint who's using Ahab all the time. I've mentioned this before. I find profiles and I kind of put them in my pocket and I say, I might not have something for this person right now, but I probably will eventually. And I kind of went back to Jennifer's profile again, because I'm always thinking about matching her with a certain kind of book, and stumbled upon her commercial voiceover reel and her audiobook reel. And I was just like, wow, again, I'll just piggyback onto what you said. The range and the difference between the two things was really important to me. So Ma, why don't you start with the audiobook reel first?
My teenage years with my grandmother echoed with the volleys of words in our continuous argument game. One day, we had an especially heated argument about my wanting to go to the movies instead of helping her chop vegetables for dinner. She told me that even if I was one of her more accessible grandchildren, I wasn't one of the ones she liked. I was annoying.
How sad.
Hi, Angelica. I just wanted to tell you how fabulous your hard-hitting gossip coverage has been. Like, how did you find out that Paris was planning a surprise touring party for Savannah?
Did you say crazy talk?
Well, why, hello there, Mr. Catma. Your posture is soft, except for those claws. I bet you could really hurt somebody with those sharp claws. I bet I do. And gosh, look at all those teeth. That's close enough. I can see them fine from here.
So much range there. I mean, I think the thing about Jennifer is like, she's kind of like, just kind of carefully working through the narrative in the audiobook thing. And then when she moved into the animation commercial thing, like these voices just explode out of her. So even if you're not prepared to create a demo that is a kind of animation commercial demo, I think it's something when you have time, we talk about on the show all the time, working on your craft, right, for actors. And I think this is one of those things where maybe you don't have one now, but maybe there is time to work on one when you have spare time, and like over time kind of build a nice little portfolio of voices that you can put together on a demo like that. So really good range from both of them. I think they will be, likely, I'm sure they both work in that field outside of the audiobook field, but really good audiobook readers as well.
Well, also, and what a great way to avoid getting typecast, because by demonstrating what else you can do to us, if you are pigeonholed in doing nonfiction or fiction or whatever your pigeonhole might be, this is a great way to break out of it and show producers like, no, I can do all these things. And if that includes a genre that you really want to work in, post some of that genre. They don't have to be professional clips.
For sure. So should we jump in with our guests?
Yeah,
All right.
Let's bring them on.
Have our guests, let's bring your video on. Let's see your faces. And of course, we want to hear your voices.
Always.
Scott Cresswell.
Hello.
Sarah Sands.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
So we just want to give you guys a quick bio and background on each of our guests today. We'll start with James C. James C. has been creating voices for animation since 1999. When a chance audition landed him the title role in Jackie Chan Adventures. Since then, he's worked steadily, supplying voices for television, movies, games, including the PlayStation series Uncharted, which—
My favorite.
Yes, we both love that. Jules and I both love that
Both
game.
of our favorites.
He's also done voices for King of the Hill and has gained eternal fame as the cabbage merchant in Avatar: The Last Airbender. James is also, talk about just like range, James is also the author of 2 novels, including the upcoming All Kinds of Other, which will be published in May 2021 by HarperCollins, and Still Life Las Vegas, which was published in 2015 for St. Martin's Press. He's also recorded some audiobooks, so there's some range for you. Jules, you want to introduce Tara?
Obviously. I am like always impressed by, we're so impressed by these 3 because of all of the range. Tara has appeared in TV commercials, audiobooks, video games, cartoons. If you don't follow her on Instagram, her Pokemon posts they make my life. They're amazing. She's also been in ads for McDonald's, American Express. The other video game series that I love is Final Fantasy, and I know both Tara and James have been in the Final Fantasy series. Tara has also done over 250 audiobooks, and she's won multiple Earphones Awards and been nominated for Audio Awards. I also just had to call out the first book that I cast Tara in was One Came Home by Amy Timberlake. And this is just like a throwback because she's done 250 books, but I loved that book because it's just my bread and butter is plucky female protagonist, YA, middle grade, and she did an amazing job in that. I also just wanted to do a shout out that like if anyone's listening or watching Dash and Lily on Netflix right now, Tara is the voice of Lily in the Dash and Lily audiobook. So take a listen to that one.
My 8-year-old daughter has eaten up several times. So thank you.
I'm scared to watch it because I am so attached to the audiobook, but I should watch the series. You know, it's scary because you're like, what if it's so different? Or
yeah, well, she was your character too, right?
I feel, well, we've done 3 books, so yeah, I mean, at that point, you feel a little bit of ownership, I guess.
Yeah. So Tara's done so much. I'm so impressed by her work. She's also interviewed tons of celebrities, including Johnny Depp, Robin Williams, and Charles Barkley. So, if you just want to switch places and you want to interview yourself or interview me, we can do something like that too.
So I also want to introduce Scott Cresswell, someone I have known for a very long time, most of my career, over 20 years. Scott is a creative, multifaceted producer, composer. He's worked on everything from feature films, multi-million selling video games, and of course, audiobooks, bread and butter in some ways. He's performed duties as far as like voice casting, he's directed, he's done music composition, sound mixing, sound design, Foley, and then just overall general production. He's also a writer for Warner Chappell Music. And I had to mention this because he doesn't put it in his bio. I know Scott very intimately because we co-produced many books together, but we recently co-produced President Obama's memoir, A Promised Land, and we got to spend 3 weeks together. So Scott, welcome to the show, an old friend and a very, very talented producer director.
Thanks, pal. Appreciate it. Glad to be here for sure.
Well, thanks, guys. Yeah, so to kick us off, we're super curious how each of you guys got into voiceover work. So James, why don't you tell us a little bit about your backstory?
Sure, that would be great. I had been a year in, this is like the equivalent of the Willy Wonka golden ticket scenario for me, because I'd always heard voiceover was so very difficult to get in, that there was a very limited pool. I had been a year in Los Angeles, coming from Chicago, trying to get on camera stuff. And my commercial agent told me that there was an audition for a Jackie Chan sound-alike for a new show. They weren't sure that Jackie Chan could, handle being in a booth every week. And, they wanted to have some options. I had really never watched any Jackie Chan stuff, but I quickly watched, Rush Hour 7 times in a row. And I did the audition and I got the part. So it was so amazing that I went from not even ever doing voiceover to being the lead in an animated show. And that ran for 5 seasons. So in effect, that became my school of learning how to do it and what things help and what things don't. So it was a wonderful show and it was a great education too. So that's how I got started.
How about you, Tara?
I was lucky. I grew up in New Jersey, pretty close to the city, and I was in a local singing competition in high school at the Y, and luckily a talent manager was there. And it's it doesn't apply now. Like, people are getting in such different ways. It doesn't help. I'm sorry. But I went to their office and they set me on a voiceover audition and I was like, what's that? Okay. It was for a commercial. I said it was for wart cream, compound W wart cream. I had to say like, ew, gross, a wart. And I booked it and my mom was like, they're paying you for that? Okay, I'll drive you into the city. So I was lucky I got in that way. And then when I got in the booth, I was like, oh, I love this. This is not at all. I mean, I was like, I want to be a serious theater. I was, theater. So I was reading, Mamet and whatever, on, pretentious crap in high school. And I was like, but being in the booth is really fun. And I did my first audiobook, I think, in college. It was like a multicast Babysitters Club series. And I was like, this is cool. And there weren't as many books produced back then. So if you got to do a book, it was exciting, and it was usually a good book.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I lucked out. I fell in love with voiceover. I continued to do everything, and then at a certain point I said, this is what all I want to do. And so it's stuck.
Awesome.
What about you, Scott? Where did you start? And tell us how you kind of like went. I know, at least I know you from the audiobook industry, but like, I don't know if that's where you started and how you ended up there, but like, it would be interesting to hear how you kind of like navigated between the different disciplines.
Yeah, so I studied music composition in college, and after college, like so many musicians, I was working at other jobs while I was trying to get that off the ground. So I happened to be good at technical stuff, so I interned at a studio and eventually became a recording engineer, working mostly on music, but also on some voice projects. This is going back far enough to where we were recording everything on reel-to-reels. So tape editing was a real skill. That was like a specialty. So one day I was at a studio and someone said, "Hey, anybody know how to, anybody do voice editing, reel-to-reel voice editing?" And I said, "Yeah, I can do that." So they said, "Okay, here's the guy's number." So I took the number, and it was a guy named Robert Kessler, which many of you should know. And
Yes.
he's like a legend in the biz. He's a wonderful producer and a sweet man. And so I ended up working with Robert doing voice editing, reel-to-reel voice editing. And I ended up hanging around a lot to where I started doing other things for him and working on recording as a recording engineer for him and tape editor. But then we also started doing some film and TV and dabbling in various things. So I started doing that and sitting in every room in the chair in the room and kind of gaining experience, and ended up doing a lot of audiobook stuff and directing and eventually producing, casting and all that. And, networking and meeting people in industries, a lot of, the related things. You work with somebody, doing a music program and they do some video game stuff. So, I had a friend named Matt Harwood who was a composer and he was working on some video game stuff. And he said, "Hey, you're good at that voice stuff. Why don't you come over here and do this thing with me? I'm working on a game." And so I ended up saying, "Yeah, I can do that. Let's do that." And so we started collaborating. We had like complementary skills and we sort of became a team. So, I ended up doing a lot of video game with my company, which is still ongoing. This is going back 15 years now. All the while doing audiobook stuff with the fine folks at Penguin and Random House, and now Penguin Random House. And so just a lot of that stuff, also keeping the music going in the background. But it's kind of I'm all over the place, and but it keeps things interesting and fresh, and I can sort of use things I learned from other disciplines and bring them over. And I feel very lucky to be working with all you guys and working on such fun projects. And I'm happy to be here and doing it all.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that Scott and I've always known about Scott, but I've only really realized in the last like 10 years is just like he knows a little about everything. And that's so helpful when you're producing any kind of audio content, which is whether it's single voice or, multi-voice content or sound effects or music, or you need music composition. So thanks.
I also always love how it's always a journey to get to voiceover, and especially audiobooks. It's usually not A to B. It's usually A to M to Z to whatever. But also that there's like, at least with James and Tara, it sounds like there was like an element of kismet there. And I feel that sometimes when I'm casting something on Ahab and I'm looking at the auditions and I'm listening, and sometimes you get down to 3 people and you're like, I would be happy with any of these people. And I'm like, I have a slight preference for this person. I'll send those samples to an author and I'm like, this is what I think. What do you think? And they might go with what I think, or they might say someone else, but it's literally, it's sometimes the needle in a haystack getting that part. So that's awesome.
And just going along with what you were saying about Kismet, there's a certain kind of actor who only thinks about, like, I'm only going to be on camera, or I'm only going to be on stage, or I'm only going to do one kind of voiceover. And I think part of Kismet is being prepared and being observant of what is going on around you. And if there is an opportunity, be ready for it, be prepared, and then just see where it goes. Don't put your blinders on as far as opportunities are concerned, because you never know where one opportunity is going to lead.
So, one of the things that because I'm learning, and I'm going to be learning in this episode as well, but like one of the things I'm really interested with James and Tara is just, and James, we can start with you, but what's the difference in kind of like preparation or in the booth as it relates to kind of like video games, animation, and maybe, as it relates to maybe audiobooks, which are a little bit different?
Well, to me, the majority of games are, you feel a lot that the machinery behind it, because for video games, you're the background, you're acting as the background for playing, right? Whereas with animation, the story is the entire thing. So with an animated show or a movie, you're going to get a script ahead of time, you know who your character is, and that's the most important thing, developing a character. Where most video games, you often don't get the script ahead of time, and everything you get is really disjointed. Like, okay, here's the scene right before this battle, and here's a scene before this battle, and you have to kind of just go there and be ready to take whatever direction you need. And you're also doing 5 million permutations of the same event, whether you get killed, whether you are triumphant. And so you are dying in pages and pages and pages of different ways. So I'd say
people ask you the question, like, okay, you're dying by grenade now. Now give me a death by grenade. Okay, now you're dying by knife. Give me a death.
Yeah.
That's very
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Now we're recording at home and our neighbors are hearing us do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, the knife is going into your bowels, and then the knife is going into your throat, and it's a slow death. So you're dying short falls, long falls, you're being beat up, and then you're just being hit lightly. So you have to be prepared for a lot of vocal stress with most video games. Do you agree, Tara?
Yes. Everything you said.
It's so interesting.
And also they, with a lot of video games, they're paying you for a certain amount of roles. So not only are you going in like kind of blind, but then they're like, okay, now you're going to play this and you're going to do all those same lines in a higher pitched voice. It's just, You're just
in my defense, I'd like to say I do try to give you guys heads up before you show up as much as possible. Certainly about the vocal stress.
Vocal stress.
That's in the contract now.
Become more normal.
So,
but it's always a surprise.
Yeah, and I try to keep the desk down, not so specific, but maybe like small, medium, and large.
And even though you might,
thank you.
Even though the producers might not know this, what you are, as an actor, are trying to do is to differentiate, to not just do the stock killing and stock bad guy, but to give some nuance and some differentiation in each character's death. So even though it might not really read because you're just doing you're hoping that at least you're giving them some variation to choose from.
To piggyback on, sorry, Julie, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, what's so interesting about all this is I feel like whenever I talk to audiobook narrators, what they say that they love about audiobook narration is that they get to play all the characters. They get to be the background, they get to be the narrator, but you guys get to live like many different lives for like certain one-off characters, which is really interesting, which is just like a whole different spin on voiceover work. So yes, Tara, go ahead.
Oh, I forgot. What was I gonna say? Something James said. I don't remember. It's
We'll come back to you.
It'll come back.
But to go along with that, I think that the big difference, because you asked about prepping for audiobooks, like what it's so much fun to play all those characters, but in audiobooks you're kind of indicating those other secondary characters. You know, like if they're French, I'm gonna make them French enough. I'm not gonna go all out because I don't want to be distracting. I'm serving the story in audiobooks, and I'm indicating characters so that they're not distracting to the story, if that makes sense. In kids, but there's sometimes we'll go full-fledged with every character in a kid's book, or if it's a multicast. But when you do animation or a video game, you are one character. Like, that's your job, is to be one character. You're not indicating, you're not, it's not a light version of it. It's becoming it. So it's a very different way of prepping. Or if you like in anime, we usually don't get any scripts ahead of time. I show up for those jobs and I don't even know who I'm playing most of the time.
I was going to say, I remember, Tara, we had a conversation once and we were talking with you and Cassandra Morris, and you guys were telling us sometimes for like embargoed video games, you might not even know really what the video game is.
No idea, because they don't want, NDAs and all that. So, there's, you hopefully know enough so that I don't, I'm a whore, I'll do any project usually, but sorry, that's awful. But if there's objectionable content, now there's actors who do want to know that stuff. So there's it's a different, it's a different world now with the way things are working with NDAs and social media, and everything's just different than it used to be. So
And Scott, when you are casting audiobook work versus a video game work, is there differences in what you're looking for, or are you looking for certain things in a performance, or is it you're just looking for someone who's capable to do something? Where do you go?
That's definitely true. So capable, definitely. They're different skills. They're different skill sets. A lot of people have both. With the audiobook long form thing, you're the whole cast. Your perspective is both, through the voices of all the characters and also the overarching story. There's a lot to do in that, and not everybody really can do that, or maybe they don't enjoy it, or what have you. Some people are just better at it, whatever. In video games, as Tara was saying, it's just you're one character playing one voice in a given moment. So we look for people with those strengths for those given things. I think, they're more focused, I think with the video game stuff, you don't always get stuff ahead of time. You don't always know exactly what's going on, but we do hope that we can kind of develop a character voice. And as James was saying earlier, just, give it something unique and original and bring it to life in a way that, will separate it from just the standard issue stuff where you just feel like, you could be anybody. You're just like a red shirt on Star Trek, where you're like, you're just gonna, get blown to pieces and die and, move on. We try to do, tease out a little bit more of that. So when I'm casting, I'm looking for interesting and unique, attributes and people who are willing to, maybe try some stuff and come and be willing to play and,
kind of back to like our previous episode, just working with the director and that kind of collaborative.
Yeah. And I love when somebody comes in and, has ideas that they want to try out and thoughts, and, that collaboration almost always pays dividends. You walk away and, just like anything, when I do music or anything, you just like, wow, this is a little bit better than either one of us. And so I loved when people come, and I always make notes when we have somebody through that just say, oh, they really were great at this, and they improv, and they it's tough because you're coming in, a lot of directors and a lot of creative types have an idea, no, that's what I wrote, no, this is the way we want it. I'm not particularly like that, and I really do enjoy that improvisation and that play. It's possibly the musician in me who just wants to, and just have fun and be creative and see what happens.
No improv in books. There's no improv in books.
No improv in books.
Pretty much. So that's called a misread. Yeah.
It's called a pickup, is what that's called.
Right.
Yeah.
On the heels of that, there's a good question that actually came in that I think we should answer live from Steve Hendrickson. And this is kind of geared towards Scott, but Tara and James, you guys can weigh in as well. Can talent break into this industry if they're in a flyover state, as the question was asked, as Steve asked, the flyover state being in the middle of the country? Is it just New York and LA, and that's kind of the way people get those gigs, or is it just kind of now we're at a point, and part of the reason we built Ahab was for this very reason, right? To find talent everywhere.
Oh, we're in a pandemic, folks. I mean, who's heading to the studio? It's like, so yeah, this is a great time to break in from the Midwest. That being said, like LA and New York, obviously, when I still work with obviously agencies on both coasts, and finding talent and stuff like that. But more and more, I think that talent is located everywhere. We kind of, when I'm scheduling sessions, I'm like, okay, what time zone are you in? Let me try not to screw this up, and get everybody sort of lined up, because I'm working with if I'm working on the Magic the Gathering game, those guys are in Seattle. So, that we have somebody, somewhere in between, it gets a little tricky. But yeah, I think anything goes. And, this pandemic has sort of, I think, a lot of people are like, well, I can't wait till things get back to normal. And I'm like, well, there may be a new normal, because I don't, this is kind of a, major life-changing event. And, when you learn to work a different way over the course of, what is it now, 11 months or something, and we're looking at into the fall or whatever of this year, you kind of figure out how to do it differently, and then that works pretty well. And you're like, well, then why wouldn't we work with someone from somewhere in the middle of the country, or not in one of the sort of urban centers on the coasts, as it were. So yes, yeah, you can definitely break in on this stuff, and Ahab is a great way to do it. At some point, I want to touch on an Ahab story, I just found somebody that that was great, that I didn't find on either coast, and not through an agency. And so yeah, but we were going. I know James wants to say something. So
I think it was Tara.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna piggyback
right.
on that audiobooks, and this is just from conversations with engineers I've had. For audiobooks, absolutely, you can be anywhere. I think for commercials, absolutely, specifically because you're working, like if you're doing a single person narration, your studio tone is going to be used the whole time. I know for things like cartoons and video games, anime, like dubbing jobs, they can't wait to get back into a studio, because they want a unified sound. They're having, and it's a nightmare for them to be mixing 10 different actors' home studios. So while there are absolutely jobs that you can do from anywhere in the world, there are still some that will want you to be there when this pandemic is over. Being the there's studios that I'm sure are not hiring me right now, because I'm an only at home studio person.
Mm-hmm.
And they make us write on an audition like willing to come to studio, and they're like, it won't affect your chances, but it's frustrating, but it's because of the post-production work on those projects.
Mm-hmm.
So while yes, absolutely, you can do this, but there, when this is over, there might be a few things.
Well, that's so interesting. Just a big difference between audiobook work and video game work or animation work. For me, I get really excited about projects that I'm casting like 50 actors. Like that's like a rare book, like 30 actors, 15 actors. But Scott, all the time, I know when we were talking about Magic the Gathering, he was like, I have 50 actors to cast. And that is 50 different soundscapes at 50 different studios. So I can only imagine how difficult that is in post-production.
I was going to say was, to Tara's point, I think it really is, mission critical for folks who want to do this, at a professional level, to get their audio game, get it on, because you really got to, you have to upgrade on Tara. You guys can see she's in a pretty dope booth there. And
but they'll find things to second of recording. I mean,
yeah. And I've got, and this is, this is a blanket in my studio. So
you can make it work,
You can make it work. And really, yeah, I totally agree with you, Scott, because you need that flexibility to say, yes, I can work in my home, but it is of enough quality that the engineers aren't going to go crazy.
Sure.
I've
I mean,
worked
I'm in a
with
closet. This is not a booth, by the way. I'm in a
Right.
You can't see. My boots are right up there. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a closet as well. I've worked with like maybe 2 engineers getting this going, where they listen to it, they say, oh, it sounds a little dead here. Can you move your mic a little closer to this or that? Or could you use some sound, some panels, some acoustic panels? And it's like a headshot or a demo tape. This is just part of the business of being in voiceover. So if you have any money to invest, it's a great thing to invest in.
Yeah, and I think the sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that, more and more now people are, companies are thinking in terms of the reality of our situation, that we're all working from home, and there are a lot of vendors who will put together, pretty affordable packages for people who want to sort of set up and get up and going, at a sort of commercially viable level. So, I mean, it's more and more affordable. This used to be a very exclusive, depending on what microphone, or just that alone, you could, it could be a fortune, but, we've all been made to sort of figure it out. And I think by virtue of that, we've realized that, hey, if you've got a $400 or $500 microphone that, that sounds pretty decent, and you can sort of deaden your space, you can do a pretty decent job. And, also on the post-production side, speaking of like people wanting pristine tracks, I mean, if you can manage to pull that off by having people come in person and do sessions, good for you. But, we're doing a lot in post-production to compensate for it, happily so, because we don't want anyone to be put at risk by having to go in, LA right now. I mean, it's tough out there. I know, I'm not sure what the union status is right now, at least, but for doing in-person sessions, but, I know for a long time it was, nope. So
they have a list. There's a website with a list of approved studios that there's certain protocols they have to follow, and they're pretty strict.
Yeah. I'll also jump in and just say, Scott loves when I say things like, you can fix that in post, right? which I've done.
Said a lot.
I've said it a lot over the years, where I'm like, we'll let that go. You can fix that in post.
Oh, you poor
I can't make him a different human being. Stop.
Right. We're gonna,
Oh, I was gonna say. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dad.
Oh, I know, Jules, you have one question, but I did want to ask this question because I think it's actually important, and it carries over to different genres or different disciplines of voiceover for Tara and James. But like, how do you come up with the voices that you create in studio? Because I remember Jim Dale, when he was reading Harry Potter, when he talked about creating voices, one of the voices was just a person he overheard in an elevator, and he kind of went back to his apartment and recorded it in his little recorder and kept it in his back pocket. But are there techniques or just, is there prep you do to get yourself prepared to just pull out, any number of voices you have?
Artwork helps for video games and animation. A lot of time in anime, the artwork a lot of the time informs what it sounds like. I'll see it and I'll go, oh, I know what that sounds like. Other times, with a book, it's obviously different because we're scanning the pages for any hint of accent or vocal trait. With animation and video games, a lot of times I had an audition for a game this week. There were probably 5 characters we were reading for. It was a 1.5-page description of the character, and the lines were literally like, stop, he's gonna shoot, and duck and it was like just combat stuff, and I had a page of their and a half of their backstory, which is sometimes I stopped reading. I was like, this is not helpful right now. This is not helping me. But those things, obviously, if it was a better script, would have really informed the voice. They're very, often they're very specific about what they want. And you'll hear stories from actors who will give a take 2 that's completely different than what they want. And that's what books the job. They were like, yeah, I just wanted to do a take 2 with the Russian accent, and it worked. So it's thinking outside the box, and also then giving them exactly what they want, and then being like, but here in my back pocket is an idea I have.
Just as a creative, I love that concept that something visual, like a visual piece of artwork, it's a visual of the character is informing the sound. And then also the writing, the description of a character is informing the sound. And all of those three are working together in those other voiceover categories that you're working on. I just think I always go,
like we did
yeah,
Roller Girl we did together, right? So
yeah.
I mean the artwork in that book just showed you the tone. Like I think that's the big difference between all these things is, and within each category, within animation, you're like, what's the tone? Is it a Pixar movie or is it, you know, Looney Tunes? Those have different tones, and it's just research. But the artwork in something like Roller Girl, you're like, oh, I get this. They're cool, but I can be silly. You know, it just.
I wonder.
And you were like, yeah.
Yeah, and the research is important. Because if you don't know what the current landscape of the animation world is now, you might, you might try to play this animal sounding like the animal. Like if it's a dog, you might try to sound like a dog, where the style of animation or the zeitgeist of animation is for dogs to sound like people. And they don't want, they don't want you to sound like this. They want you to sound like a hipster guy. Right. So, and Disney Plus or Disney Junior has a different sound than Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon has a different sound than Bob's Burger. So you really have to do the research in watching these different animation shows to know what they're requiring of you. Like, even if you're a villain in a Disney Junior show, you're not going to be over the top and really scary. You're going to be you don't want to scare the little 5-year-old. So you temper things depending on what the show is. And I think that's a really important thing, to do, is to watch what's out there now.
So I'm really curious. You guys have been super successful in going from category voiceover genre to another one to another one. Do you have any advice for people who are interested in crossing over genres, to go to video games if they've only worked in audiobook work, or to go to audiobook work if they've only been in animation? What can they do? And I know we're in a weird time right now, but
yeah, I want to know about going from animation to audiobook. What advice would you guys have?
Well, I think if you listen to the demos we played early on, it's to not do an animation thing when you're doing an audiobook thing to start. I mean, my advice, and everyone, I'm beating the drum, I should just have a banner behind my head every time we do this, is just pay attention to the narrative, right? Like, there are just such huge differences between doing 500 voices and really being a good storyteller. And I think that's focus on the storytelling and then refine the voices when you're in the studio. I think that's really the difference, as opposed to, I think, animation, where it's like, I got to focus on the voices and there is no narrative. The narrative is like maybe the picture. It's like, oh, now I get it. Okay, I'm going to do the voice. So, focus on the narrative and the voices will come, especially if you have someone working with you, and bounce that stuff off of people that you know. I mean, that's always my best advice.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's being a good actor. And I would say, if you are interested in genre hopping, is that a thing?
I love that. Yeah. Now it is.
Right.
Now it
genre
is.
hop. And again, I hate telling people do anything that costs money, but there are great coaches. Go to one great coach instead of a bunch of crappy ones who's actually working. Go to, there are so many useful Facebook pages for voiceover. There are casting people on Twitter who are putting out casting calls. So it's keeping up with the technology. It's joining all those annoying Facebook groups. It's reading everything you possibly can. Lots of successful voiceovers are putting out books, and you have to love it. You have to want to do it so badly. It's scouring. Audiobooks are easier because there's a lot of places that take submissions. It's a little trickier with the other genres, but it's just spending hours in front of your computer. I mean, I still do all this. Like, I'll see a name on something. I'll go, what do they do? Oh, and they're on LinkedIn. Let me see if they have a Twitter account. Let's see what they're into. Like, is that a good fit for? And I mean, I still coach with people. I did a commercial coaching session not that long ago. Like, and this is after 20-something years doing this. So
yeah,
you have to love it and really want to do it.
Yeah, it takes the drive and the focus, the discipline, all that stuff. You got to really acquaint yourself with what you're going after. So often when I get auditions for, for video game stuff, or if I might even solicit something from somebody I know from the audiobook world and say, hey, I think your voice is just could be great for this character. And I'll get something in, and they've got their audiobook sort of head on. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not, let's bring it up, animate it, make it bigger. Like, here's what you got to do. We're not, we've really got to dial in the character. It's all about that, the voice and your presence. And I think for me, just if you want to get into video games, really go study it. Go study it. Go see what people are doing. If you have an idea of what we're looking for, and by virtue of what you see on the marketplace, you're probably gonna have a better shot than just sort of saying like, I can do funny voices, like I can, or whatever you're going after. Really educate yourself, get in there and like take a deep dive into what's out there and what people are doing, and still be you, still be creative, still be, try to do something interesting and fresh, but also just know what's out there and what's happening, because I mean, they're very, very different. And I think for, the flip side of that, for coming from that world going into audiobooks, is this is a very, very different. I mean, Dan spoke to it about the narrative and this, you're talking about, you're presenting this entire world through your one voice and all these characters, this ensemble, it's a different animal, and there's and it's long form. So there's, if you're going for 3 or 4 days in the studio, and if there's a certain amount of efficiency that enables you to not make this a super painful slog. Like if there's a technique to getting through a chapter pretty smoothly and hitting all your marks, that's a discipline that takes practice, and there's technique. And as Tara mentioned, there's so many good coaches out there, and lots of places you can
workshops
go.
And there used to be conferences. Hopefully we'll have conferences again,
right.
even if they're virtual for now.
Communities online, Facebook communities and other communities where you can learn and pick the brains of people that are having some of the same issues and work through them.
I always believe in emerge. Oh, what were you saying, Tara?
I was going to talk about, like, just real quick, mic technique is different for all these things too.
Oh yeah, tell
and Scott just kind of reminded me. There's a very, very successful animation actress that I know, and I said something to her like, "Oh, I do audiobooks." She goes, "Oh, I tried that once." It was for you guys. I'll tell you who it was later. But she said, it was a character she had done, and they were doing a book, and she went in and she used all her energy in the first 3 pages, and she was exhausted. And she said, "I can't do this. I can't get through 100 pages. How do you do that?" I go, "Well, it's a completely different energy level when you do a book." Well, and that's, a director should have told her how to, manage that a little bit. But mic technique, you can't be 100%. No one wants to listen to that. You have to think about where people are listening to these things. If they're playing a video game, they're sitting in front of a TV. They're ready to be screamed at. Same with animation. If it's a kid listening in the back of the car, he wants to be entertained. Audiobook, I was taught pretty early on, like I was working with like Paul Rubin and people like that. You don't yell the same way in an audiobook. It's almost like you indicate a yell and a scream or a whisper or a thing, because you don't want to, your levels can't be all over the place. If someone's listening with ear pods in,
the technique is totally different.
Totally different.
It's like back off the mic and then yell that way, and instead of yelling right into the mic.
Right, but with the game, dead on, you're gonna yell in a completely different.
You want to be
that
in
better
it.
sound. Yeah, if you're playing that game, you want to feel like that person really died.
Yeah.
Well, that mic technique, mic technique, especially now that many of us are recording from home, it's even tougher. It's really tough because, you may achieve a good sound if you've got your mic set up right here and like this, but like, as you're saying, if we're working on a video game and you're just like, okay, can you just die a little louder for me? You got to come back here, and then suddenly we're hearing all of the space. It's really challenging, and it's worth doing the work to familiarize yourself with the gear and be able to manipulate it and get it dialed in so that you can you can do this stuff.
Yeah,
As much as I would love that we could all go back to studios too at some
I think
point.
it's like, well, because it's like, it is such a skill putting a mic, not only placing a mic the first time, but placing it in this, for audiobooks at least, placing it in the same place every
Right.
single time the person's down. I mean, I think anytime when Scott and I have recorded books before, he'd be like, he's not in the same place. You can hear it almost immediately when you're listening to a book. But yeah, I think also, and it's a good tip is, look, we're in this community of actors and producers and all, but also pick the brains of engineers and people like that. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But Jules, should we bring on our VO Roulette?
Yeah, so we've reached the point in the show. Who do we got, Molly?
Our VO Roulette winner this week is Tom Weitzel.
Oh,
I'm going to allow you to turn on your camera.
We're ready for you, Tom. Hey, Tom.
Hi there. Hello.
Hi,
hello from California.
Hello from New York. Great to have you on.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So Tom, where are you from? Let's start there.
I'm originally from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and but I've been in California for about 35 years.
Great. And tell us a little bit about your kind of acting experience or your voiceover experience, if you have any.
Sure, absolutely. I'm an Emmy-winning TV producer, but rather kind of a neophyte as far as audiobooks go. I've done 10 audiobooks, and I've studied with Johnny Heller and Scott Brick, some of the best people. I study acting at the Ruskin School here in Santa Monica, study improv with some people. I study a lot, audition a lot, and would like to book more.
I think most of the people in the chat box feel exactly the same way. So what is your kind of what is your dream role in the voiceover world? What would you like to do?
I started listening to books on tape when they were on cassettes, and when you'd get a bad cassette, you'd drop it in the box, and then magically it would appear the next day. So I've always been a fan of audiobooks. I listen all the time. So I would to do more. As I said, I've done 10. I'd like to do more. I have an affinity for mystery. When I was thinking of this, what would my dream job be? It would be to narrate a murder mystery investigated by a man, but in the world of fine art.
Ooh.
That's pretty specific.
Awesome.
Well, I figured, hey, if I got the chance to put it out there, I'm putting it out there.
Is there something you've been listening to recently, or something you really an audiobook or another form of voiceover that you really kind of loved and respected that you want to share with us?
My big three are Scott Brick, Johnny Heller, Hillary Huber, and actually Ashley Ryan, who narrated Fleischman is in Trouble.
I've heard that.
I like to listen to women because obviously their voice prints are going to be very different than mine. And I just thought what she did, it was just marvelous. And Meryl Streep's reading of Colm Tóibín's The Testament of Mary is, I play piano. It's like playing an entire song in one octave, but what she did with that was just artistry.
It's amazing. I'm always telling actors who are trying to get into audiobook work, step one is listening, because it is such a different art form from so many other types of acting. And also, if you love audiobooks, there's a good chance you'll love reading them in the studio, because as Tara was alluding to earlier, there are a lot of people that really don't like recording audiobooks. It's a lot of time in a small space, prolonged recording, but if you love reading and you love character work, yeah.
It's kind of a microcosm of what audiobook recording is these days, right? We're all kind of
Right.
My room.
We are, yes. We're all audiobook narrators now. Outside of audiobook work, is there anything else that you're especially proud of, Tom, that you've worked on before, a role or even producing? You mentioned that.
I was with the TV show Entertainment Tonight for about 26 years. I went there to do 2 weeks of vacation, fill in, and I left 26 years later.
Wow.
So apparently I didn't stink too bad. And they sent me all over the world. So I've directed entertainment content on 6 of the 7 continents, and that's
amazing.
That's my big get.
And you know what's great about hearing that, Tom, is like we're always talking about when we're talking about our Ahab profiles for actors, it's like that's information sometimes that can get you a gig. You know, like that's information when people put that in their Ahab profile or their bio that people like stumble on and go, oh, this is, you know, I like this guy's voice, but now that I've read this, he's got this breadth of knowledge that maybe I didn't, that maybe some other actors don't have. So it's important to kind of give, I think, producers and people out in this industry kind of a fully formed version of yourself. And that's really interesting.
Thank you very much. Yeah. An example is I was in Africa once and a kid came up to me and he was wearing a Thriller t-shirt. So that speaks to the power of American popular culture.
Well, thank you, Tom. Really good to get to know you, and hopefully we see you in the recording booth.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Sure.
It's a pleasure. I never win.
You won today. Lucky today.
I never go to Vegas just for this reason. Thank you.
All right. So I think we're at that time, Jules. Do we want to?
Oh my gosh.
So I'm gonna switch it up because I think normally I would ask for final thoughts from everybody, but I think what we want to do, because I think this is about range, is, you know, I want to get a final thought from you and from Scott, but for James and Tara, I want you to, if you would, perform the voice that you're either most widely known for that you've done in another genre of voiceover, or a character that you just love performing. So
did I request Balpazar?
I was just gonna say he only says one word.
All right, so
I knew Julie was gonna do that.
Why don't you and Scott, let's end this on a high note. So why don't you and Scott and I give our final thoughts? Jules, what's your final thought for today?
Oh man, I feel like, okay, so I feel like I'm always like trying to be present and take in what, like when I see patterns and things happening. So earlier today, I was listening to Matthew McConaughey's new audiobook, which is freaking phenomenal. And
thank you. I produced that book.
I know you did, and you lucky guy getting
all right.
Just a little
all right.
But his book is called Green Light, and he talks about looking for the green lights in life and going with the flow when you see opportunity. And that, I think, circled back when James mentioned something like that similarly earlier, in that keep your eyes and ears and open for opportunity. And sometimes things present themselves to you, and that might not be what you envisioned for yourself. I personally didn't think I would be in audiobooks. I thought I was going to be a children's book editor for middle grade and young adult. And honestly, I'm so happy I didn't go that route, because I love the interpersonal aspect of audiobooks so much more than I think I would have loved being an editor in a room somewhere and not having so much contact with people. So staying open, and yeah, I'm so impressed by all three of you guys from working across all areas of voiceover. It's really impressive to me. What about you, Scott?
That's a great final thought. I think, you prepare for what you want to do and be open to what comes. And I love it. My final thought, I think it's like 2 parts. One is basically, know yourself, figure out what you're good at, what you're not good at, what maybe you can work on, and figure out where you want to go, and, try to dial your stuff in, and then make sure that what you're going to do when you get there. So like educate yourself, immerse yourself in the things that you want to do, and just work at your craft, but yeah, know who you are, know how you fit in, what your strengths are, and figure out how to get there. It's a lot of, Ahab's going to be great for people, who want to kind of get as talent folks come in and start utilizing the engine. It's going to be great if you can put up all those samples, and this is a great forum for those people who do want to. I keep saying in the chat, like, how do you break in? I think that's great.
Audition for us on Ahab. I'm listening to the people every single day whenever I have a public audition actually up there right now. Unfortunately female only, so for any female actors out there. So yeah, I will listen to every single one of those auditions. So if you want to get in front of us, there's an opportunity right there. Dan, what do you got?
So, Jules, this, Scott, this. I'm a big sneaker file, but I'm also a collector of hats as well.
You are?
I am. I have tons.
I've never seen you wear hats.
Kidding?
Your hair looks so good, though. Why would you cover that up?
So the only reason I bring up hats is because Scott said something interesting before, and it's something I always think about when I'm working with actors, which is like, remember what hat you're wearing when you go into the studio. And there's a lot of actors who are doing commercial work all day, and then they walk into the studio and to do an audiobook, and they still think they're wearing that commercial hat. And I've made the joke before. It's like chapter 1, and you're like, sir, this is the opening chapters. There's a woman dying in a hospital. Like, maybe we want to tone it down and get back into our audiobook. So remember what hat you're wearing when you walk into that booth every single time. And I think that will allow you to at least, position yourself in a place for success when you start narrating whatever it is you're going to be narrating. I mean, I know that when I walk out, I look at whatever hat I'm wearing. So when it comes to your audiobook hat or your commercial hat or your animation hat, make sure that you know what hat you're wearing.
I guess I know when Dan's in LA, because in LA, whenever we used to go traveling and seeing all of our LA friends, including Tara, he would always wear a hat. So I knew Dan was in LA when he was wearing his backwards cap out there. But.
James and Tara, I do want you to, I want you to do the voices, but if you do have final notes, we want to hear those as well. I'm not going to make you say them in like kind of your like Yoda voice where all the knowledge.
I mean, you could.
I'll do my first part as me, and then I'll give Julie
all
what
right,
she needs.
let's do it, Tara.
I was going to say, as much as this webinar is about diversifying amongst the different genres of voiceover, genre hopping, if you love one genre, it's okay to just do that too. I mean, Cassandra Campbell, is amazing, and she's just an incredible narrator. And we've had talks when she's like, I cannot do commercials. She's like, she's like, show me how to do it. We've had these. It's not what she wants to do. It's not what she thinks she's good at. She is great at this, and she loves this, and that's what she does. And that's okay too. So while it's amazing to diversify, if you find a lane that is satisfying and you're working, and don't worry that you need to be doing everything. So that's kind of counter to what we've been talking about. Sorry. But true. And for Julie, the character that I'm most known for, I got a job on Pokemon when I was pretty young, and my character only says one word, and it will be on my gravestone. And so Bulbasaur's advice would be Bulbasaur, Bulba. Bulbasaur, 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 Bulbasaur. It's ridiculous. It is.
It's fantastic.
So good.
So silly.
Awesome.
Thank you. You just made my week. So that's like, I journal every night. That's my big moment of joy right there.
I'm in your diary.
You're in my diary.
You should know this episode as joining us today, Bulbasaur, and we should ask you to actually speak in that voice the entire.
Not what I thought I'd be talking about 20 years later. I can promise you that. But you have to, I mean, I know people who get upset by that. Like, I have to embrace that. So I was gonna say, if that's your journey, like, don't be angry at people for there's actors who get mad. Like, if someone calls me Bulbasaur, I'm like, thank you. All right, cool. You could have, there's a lot of worse things you could call me. You could not know me at all. So embrace it.
All right, James, it's your turn.
All right. Well, the advice I would give, or the final words, is that in the 20 plus years that I've been working, I've never known there to be as much need for other voices, marginalized voices, people of color, trans narrators or actors, non-binary. In all of these different genres of voiceover, they are looking for these voices, these own voices. And so if you're in a community like that, get ready, start working because there is a need for it. And this is in the 20 years I've been working, this is the best time for people of color and other marginalized voices. As far as my favorite character, well, I just played Stillwater for a animated show on Apple TV. And he's based on Zen Shorts. And I got to play the panda, which I had read for my son when he was little. So I was very excited to play that. However, most people, like the Bulbasaur, most people will know me, and I will go down in history as the person who says, "My cabbages!" That's it.
I gotta find
Scene.
that. Oh my God, I gotta find that.
Oh my God, this is
Awesome.
so good. Well, thank you guys all for coming on. We
all.
super appreciate
This is
it.
one of the most fun episodes we've had for sure.
Yeah. Completely switching it up next month, Dan.
Yes.
You know, we're going into the tech side of things. I know so many people have so many questions for us about tech. And you guys email us, you write it on the Eventbrite, keep asking us those questions. I still won't have the answer, but we have 3 people coming on in February who will. So on February 11th, as you see, at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 p.m. PST, Rick Bradley, Oki Kolwitz, and Brian Romber. Oh my God, I thought I was gonna get it. Ram Sharan. I asked him what it was.
Wow.
Just so you know, I mean, these are all super experienced tech people. They're going to educate us. I mean, I'm sure Scott Cresswell is going, "Oh, thank God you didn't put me on that one." You know, Rick Bradley does a lot of quality control, and he's done engineering and editing for all major publishers. Oki Kolwitz is the lead tech and post-production manager for my team.
Queen of post-production. She oversees everything for us.
She evaluates tons of audio and helps set the standard, in my opinion, in this entire industry for what things should sound like. So extremely experienced in knowing how to mic things, what mics work, and all of these people, and Scott, you know this when it comes to tech people, they have very definitive opinions that will be debated.
It's intense. Intensely debated
about mics and preamps and stuff that Julie and I don't even know about. And then Brian Ramshaw, who right now is a producer at Simon & Schuster Audio, who is the newest producer, is going to be the newest producer at Penguin Random House Audio.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Good job, Brian.
Yeah, we're really excited to have him on board as a member of our team. Really experienced. I met Brian at CDM Sound in New York when we were working on the audiobook that Karen Chkonsky and I produced for Angels in America, which was recorded after the cast had left New York and won all those Tony Awards, and they were all over the world. And Brian was instrumental in some ways in just kind of making sure that we had uniform sound and a lot of things that Scott talked about, miking things perfectly when, you know, one of our actors had to scream in pain into the microphone for audiobooks, not for other forms of audio. So we're really excited to have them on. And it's going to be a little bit, you know, I'm always worried when we just talk tech, but I know there's such a need in this, this community to talk more about the technical aspects of things. And we're going to try to figure out ways to try to, you know, continue that conversation even after we've left, where we can maybe answer a few more questions about tech after the fact. So,
so you guys sign up, and when you register, you can send in questions via the Eventbrite. Those are so important to us because we can actually really look through those and share them with our guests beforehand to let them know what you're really interested in, whether that's home studio setup, engineering, quality control, editing. You know, we're going all those places. Finally, I feel like you guys have been so eager for that. So thank you so much. Thanks to these guys who've made this episode so fun.
Fun. I don't want to go back to work.
I know. And we'll
All
see you guys in a month.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks.
Safe. Stay
So
well.
long.
Bye, guys.
Bye.